right. Cool. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Cool. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Akshay Kannan.
I'm Andrew Bunner.
And in this talk, we'll cover Nearby, a set of cross-platform APIs for devices to discover and communicate with the things around them. We'll start by talking about the Nearby Messages API, which lets devices find each other and communicate simply by being near each other, without having to be connected to the same Wi-Fi. Next, we'll talk about how you can use that same API as our recommended way to scan for BLE beacons, along with best practices for things like background scanning. And finally, we'll leave you with a preview of something new, which we're excited to unveil for the first time ever today. Let's get started. Our devices today have made it easy to communicate with anyone, whether they're right next to you or on the other side of the world. However, a lot of those interactions can feel cumbersome if someone or something is right next to you. And often, that's the case today. It takes several steps, whether it's exchanging contact information, scanning a QR code, or pairing via Bluetooth, just to get some information over to a nearby device. And we believe this shouldn't be the case. Ideally, you should be able to just walk up to something and interact with it, the same way that we do in the real world. Physical awareness can significantly improve the experiences in our apps, whether it's facilitating device-to-device communication, real-time collaboration, or experiences that are triggered by a beacon. With Nearby, we've created a simple set of APIs for anyone to bring proximity into their app.
So we've been working towards this vision for a while. In 2014, we launched a feature called Guest Mode on Chromecast. Now, in the past, you had to be on the same Wi-Fi network in order to cast. But with Guest Mode, you can just sit down, hit cast, and put your content on the big screen. Now, to make this possible, to prove that you're in the same room as the cast device, we use a combination of radio signals and an ultrasonic modem. And it's great when you're over at a friend's house. Works on iOS, works on Android. And we would like more cross-device interactions to be as smooth as Guest Mode. So in 2015, we took the technology that powers Guest Mode, and we made it available via an API we call Nearby Messages. It's a simple publish-subscribe API for message passing between devices that are physically close together. It's available on Google Play services for Android and on iOS via our CocoaPod. Now, because it's cross-platform, you don't have to segment your user base. So that means Android users as far back as Gingerbread can talk to iOS users going back to iOS 7. So we think that's pretty neat. There's a number of great apps that are using it today, and more developers are discovering it all the time.
We'll soon dive into the details of how you can call the Nearby API, and as well as how it works behind the scenes. But first, we want to show you examples of the experiences that developers have built with it. My favorite podcast app on the Play Store is Pocket Casts. I found a great podcast the other day that I wanted to share with Andrew. Sharing typically takes me through a list of contacts where I have to search for and pick out Andrew, even though he's standing right next to me.
I'm right here.
And if I don't already have Andrew's contact information, it's even worse. We have to exchange contact information before being able to do anything. So instead, Pocket Casts has built a much more compelling experience for comparing podcasts with the people around you using Nearby. Let's check out what it looks like. So Andrew and I both swipe over to the Nearby section of the app, and we tap Search. And at this point, Pocket Casts publishes each of our list of podcasts over Nearby. And I can see Andrew has some pretty interesting podcasts.
Oh, we've got the bases covered here, but I see you are missing the Adventure Zone. It's hilarious, highly recommended, and fragmented.
Awesome. All I have to do is tap, and now I have them. Pocket Casts uses Nearby to make it really easy to share content within their app. Another great example, Trello, is a popular team collaboration tool that lets you get things done with the people around you. Trello allows you to create boards that give you a shared perspective on a project's tasks. With Nearby, Trello has made it easy to quickly start up collaborations. With one tap, you could share a board nearby, making it available to the people around you without having to type in email addresses. The board is online, so Trello can simply pass around a pointer to their backend object over Nearby to enable this experience. Pocket Casts, Trello, and several other apps are live on the Play Store today using Nearby, so you can install them and try the experience out for yourself. In fact, we launched this API in July of last year, so some of you may already be using it in your apps today.
All right, thanks, Akshay. I'm going to walk you through how it works, what it looks like in code, and then go into some details on the permissions and the privacy. So let's start with how it works. We've got these two calls, publish and subscribe. They're for passing messages. But what actually happens? So when your app calls nearby, we allocate a short-lived pairing code to your device. And then we use a variety of means to get that code across the air gap to other nearby devices. And then any devices that detect the same code, they can then exchange messages. So it's a little different from traditional location in that it's very hard to spoof these codes. Now, by default, we use a variety of tricks to get this code from one phone to another: Bluetooth Classic, Bluetooth Low Energy, and ultrasound. And using all three of those helps ensure that nearby works across just the widest possible range of devices. So both Bluetooth Classic and Bluetooth Low Energy are 2.4 gigahertz radios. This is the same part of the spectrum as like Wi-Fi and old-fashioned cordless phones. And those radio waves go through walls. One of the reasons ultrasound is an important part of our offering is that it does not go through walls. And that privacy mode kind of mirrors what people expect in the real world. Like if I can see you and talk to you, you can hear what I'm saying. But if you're in the next room, maybe in the line outside, you can't. And that's very powerful. And it gives sharing use cases a sense of privacy that's hard to achieve with Bluetooth alone. And a side benefit is that we found that using audio in this way, it really does work just about everywhere. Every phone has a speaker. Every phone has a microphone. And it turns out they all work pretty well in this part of the spectrum. In fact, as we learned working with Chromecast and more recently Google Play Movies, televisions are also pretty good at making sounds we can't hear. So it's quite versatile. OK, this video that you see over here on the side, this is a frequency domain plot of our audio signal. That bump on the far right, that's our data. It starts around like 18.5 kilohertz, and it trails off around 20.5 kilohertz. So technically, that's near ultrasound. And incidentally, this is a screenshot of an app, Speedy Spectrum. And we had to use this during the development of Nearby because none of us could tell if the phones were actually making any sounds. None of us could hear it. And there's another reason for that is that the sound is coming out of these pretty small speakers on a phone. And it's just not a very high amplitude sound wave. And that's OK. We don't need much energy in the sound in order to decode it on the other side. So if we take this signal that you see there and slowed it way down, basically shifting it into a range that you can hear, it would sound sort of like a static hiss. And that's because it's a spread spectrum signal. So here's how that works. We take our pairing code, and then we use that to modulate some prearranged static noise. And by encoding our data inside that static, we basically make our modem robust to like echoes and other interference. So it really does work just about everywhere. OK, so enough signal processing. Let's take a look at some code and see how you can use all this. We're going to start with the general, use all the technology sample on Android. And here it is. It's just these two calls, publish and subscribe. You call publish to make your message available to nearby devices. You can think of the message as what your phone says. And then you call subscribe to receive messages from a nearby device. That's how you listen. Now, the message, it's just a byte array. You can put kind of whatever you want in there with whatever encoding, so JSON, protocol buffers, whatever's easiest. The only restriction is that it has to be less than 100 kilobytes. So that means it's good for sending authorization tokens or invites or identifiers, but not for larger content like images or movies. So if we go back to the Pocket Cast example, they published the list of the podcasts, not the bytes of the audio tracks themselves. And here's the iOS version. It's very very similar. It's got square brackets, and it's got 100% feature parity and compatibility with the Android version, and we're very proud of that. Now, this earshot feature, this is something special. If you want to make your message available only to devices in the same room, this is how you do it. Now, there's thousands of lines of correlation math and signal processing and under the hood, but you don't have to worry about that. You just call set distance type earshot, and that's it. Very simple. All right. Last, I want to talk about privacy and transparency. So we think it's important that a user know when an app is using Nearby and that they know what's actually happening. So before an app can call Nearby, they have to get permission. So this is our runtime permission dialog, and we're going to show this when an app calls nearby. It explains what radios and what sensors we use and how. And in fact, tapping on Learn More will give the user as detailed an understanding of what's happening under the hood as the developer reading our documentation. And that's on purpose in both directions. We want the user to be informed, and we want the developer to be able to focus on their features. So it's basically, this dialog, by the way, this is a once per app thing. So it's really similar to Marshmallow's runtime permissions. We just took those rules and backported them to Gingerbread. And this is kind of an important point. You don't have to change your manifest. Because it's a runtime permission, you don't have to change your manifest. You can just add the feature without worrying about breaking automatic updates. But because we are going to show this dialog, you want to have the user do something explicit to access your nearby feature. And that way, when we show the dialog, it's connected in the user's minds with the action that they just took. So maybe have a special screen, like Pocket Casts, or a widget that turns it on, like Trello. So the user is in control. They're asked for permission and context. And the app developer doesn't have to worry about breaking automatic updates. Oh, and there's one more thing. There's a notification there that you see. When an app has an active publish or subscribe going, this shows up, and from there, the user can hit stop, or they can even revoke the permission. So total control to the user. OK, so we've just seen how easy it is to add peer-to-peer features to your app with Nearby. I want to talk about using Nearby with beacons. So beacons are these simple transmitters. They're often disconnected and running on a battery, and they emit identifiers. These are 31-byte strings that you can use to mark important places or objects. And then your app can scan and get these identifiers, and then figure out if the user is near something of interest. There's a number of apps that are doing this today. And generally, they're using the platform APIs directly, or they're using an open source library on top. I'm going to try to convince you, if your app scans for beacons, I'm going to try to convince you to switch from whatever you're doing now to using this new version of Nearby. And we've got several reasons for this, and I think after we share these, I hope you'll agree that Nearby is a great way to interact with beacons. We really wanted to make this worth your while, and I think we did. So we've got 3 reasons. Let's start with this one. So this is for developers who they want to scan for beacons, but they've been afraid to add the Bluetooth admin permission. Now, we want users and developers to have a consistent permission story around beacon scanning, and today that's just not the case. On Marshmallow, you can scan for beacons if you have access to fine-grained location. But on Lollipop and below, you need the Bluetooth admin permission. And unless your app was doing something with beacons from the very beginning, you probably don't have this permission, and adding it is going to break your automatic updates. And that has real business consequences for many of you. Also, we're not even sure it makes sense. Bluetooth admin actually lets you do a lot more than just scan for beacons. So with Nearby, we are changing the rules. When your app scans for beacons through Nearby, you only need access to fine-grained location on all platforms. So we took the Marshmallow scanning rules, and we ported them back to Jelly Bean MR2 when we first introduced beacon scanning. And this is an important point. Most apps will be able to add support for beacon scanning without updating their manifest. All right, the second reason is you're probably going to get more scans for free just by using Nearby. Now, I'm going to explain kind of with an analogy here, and I hope you'll see where it's going. So let's take Wi-Fi. Now, if you use the platform's Wi-Fi manager, you can passively listen for scan results that are triggered by other apps. So you can kind of piggyback on the scans that they initiate. But BLE in the platform has historically worked differently. Each app has to trigger a scan, and then only that app sees the results of that scan. But when you scan for beacons through Nearby Subscribe, we will do a scan every time the screen turns on, and all the apps using Nearby will benefit from that scan. We'll route any beacons matching your app's filter over to you. And if an app explicitly triggers a scan through Nearby, again, all the apps that are using Nearby will benefit. All you have to do is tell us which beacons you're looking for ahead of time, and then we'll route beacons matching that filter over to your app, and you'll get to process those sightings. Now, there's one more important trigger that I want to mention here, and that's location history. If the user has location history enabled, that service will do BLE scans in the background throughout the day. And if it finds anything matching your app's filter, again, we're going to route them to you, and you'll get to process those beacons. So more free scans when you use Nearby. OK, the last reason is for folks doing background scans. Now, if you're doing background scans today, chances are that you're scheduling alarms, you're grabbing wake locks, you're using the job scheduler, you're trying to run a background service. It's pretty involved. It's pretty difficult. And it's actually getting even harder with Android N. But if you use Nearby and we find a beacon of yours, we will wake your app up to tell you about it, even if your app has been killed. So, OK, yes, that's my one applause line. Thank you. So this makes background scanning with Nearby just a whole lot simpler than the alternative. So again, if any app, or location history, or that screen on scan, any of those scans find find a beacon for your app, we're going to relaunch your app via a pending intent, and you'll get to process the beacon. So for all these reasons, Nearby is our recommended API for interacting with beacons. And by itself, I think those three represent a pretty compelling argument to switch. But just in case you're not convinced, there's more coming. So we're going to be adding some features in the coming weeks. In particular, you'll get access to the raw iBeacon and Eddystone frames directly. You'll be able to use your own beacon cloud registry, and you'll have distance callbacks. So we're really improving this all the time. And there'll be samples for all of this up on GitHub once the SDK drops. Again, we think it's a win for both users and for you guys, for developers. If you want to go deep on beacons, there's a talk happening right after this in stage 4 about the Google, thank you, stage 4, the Google Beacon platform. Deep dive on the proximity beacon service. OK, so that's Nearby Messages. It's available today on Google Play Services for Android and on iOS via our CocoaPod. And we're improving it every release. So really, whether you're using beacons or you're doing something peer-to-peer, it's just a great way to add proximity features to your app.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Now on to something new. As you've seen, Nearby Messages gives apps a powerful set of APIs to interact with nearby devices and beacons. But of course, this requires the app to be installed in the first place. What if you're at a place, but you don't yet have the app that lets you interact with it? Or perhaps there's a mobile website that lets you interact with something when you're physically there. There are often proximity-driven features in apps or websites that can make our users' lives better. But not if you don't even know about them. We want to solve this problem. So today, we're announcing a new feature in Android for you to know about relevant nearby experiences surfaced through BLE from the things around you. And we're calling this Nearby Notifications. So how does it work? Let's say you purchase a brand new Chromecast. Today, the first thing that you have to do is to go to the Play Store, search for the Chromecast app, find it, download it, all before you can start using this brand new device. Imagine instead if any smart device you purchase could broadcast the setup experience for it. And with Nearby, you could get the companion app and pair with it simply by tapping a notification. Another example. I recently flew into SFO from abroad and had to go through US Customs. I installed this app, Airside Mobile Passport, which allowed me to go through a much faster line dedicated to mobile passport users. With Nearby, my phone could tell me that that experience was available and let me install the app with a single tap. And another more everyday example. The Target app has a feature that lets you scan a product in the store and see online reviews. It's an easy way to get more information about something before you put it into your cart. And it's extremely relevant when you're at a store. But it's tricky to get to this feature if you don't know about it. Once again, Nearby can help. We aim to solve discovery in a quiet but helpful way. So on Android, we're introducing Nearby, not just as an API, but as a core user-facing feature, and creating new ways for developers to expose relevant experiences over BLE. You can look for this in the coming weeks as part of an update to Google Play Services. This will work on devices running Jelly Bean MR2 and above. Here are some examples of what it looks like. When Bluetooth and location are turned on, we'll show you relevant content from the beacons around you. So what does this look like in the real world? Let's go back to the Target example and imagine that we're there. I've been running low on shaving supplies, so I'm here to stock up. I'm in the aftershave aisle, trying to find the perfect product, and as I'm looking around, one of them catches my eye. Caffeinated aftershave. Could this be too good to be true? I need to know if this actually works. So I decided to pull out my phone and check out reviews. Now, normally, I'd have to type in the name of this product and search for reviews about it. But this time, Target has associated their app with a beacon in the store. When I swipe down on notifications, I see Target, scan barcodes, see reviews. At this point, all I had to do was turn my screen on in the store. The only requirement for me to see this was to have location and Bluetooth enabled. My phone doesn't buzz, but when I swipe down on notifications, I get this helpful hint. Tapping on this notification launches me directly into the barcode scanning experience in the Target app. If I didn't have the app installed, Target could have either launched me to a mobile website or directly to their app install, which we'll talk more about in a bit. And now, I can scan the barcode. And I can see that it costs $5.49. I can tap over to reviews. I can see that people have been pretty happy with it. It has a 5-star review. And the reviews look pretty good. So I'm convinced, and I decide to throw it into my cart. So this is just one example of the many experiences that you can associate with a place or a device using Nearby. Nearby introduces an entirely new surface to Android for proximity-driven discovery, and we're excited to see what you'll build with it. So how do you get started? There are 3 types of content that you can attach to your beacon. First, we support simple HTTPS web URLs. These can point to websites or to instant apps, which you heard about in the keynote earlier today. Second, we support intents into your app along with the URL fallback to the mobile web for users who don't have your app installed. And third, we're experimenting with direct app installs, where tapping the notification will let you install the app even if it's not there, and then launch you into the intended experience.
That's our other applause line, by the way.
It's still early days, and we want to be careful to hold the user experience bar high. So we have a set of criteria for early inclusion in our direct app install program, which we'll talk more about in the coming slides. So that's Nearby in a nutshell. There are several verticals where we can help users discover relevant experiences: travel, museum, sports, retail, smart devices, and I'm sure you'll all find more. Now, I'll hand things over to Andrew, who will talk more about our criteria for whitelisted app installs, along with the details of how you can tie your feature to a beacon.
Thanks, Akshay. So we expect many of you, many developers, to be interested in this app install feature. We recognize that installs are very valuable, but we want to be careful to balance the user experience against the overhead of an install. The instant apps that you heard about earlier, those will change that equation. But for now, for the traditional app install, we're evaluating partner integrations against some pretty specific criteria. These criteria could evolve, but in the interest of transparency, we want to share with you what we're looking for. So the first and the most important criteria is your app has a feature that's relevant at a place or near a device. If the feature is not contextually relevant, then it's just not for Nearby. The second is that we want features that let a user do something. So not just informational, but action-oriented. And then the third is we're looking at how broadly relevant is this notification to all the people receiving it. So for example, if you manufacture a smart device, like maybe a smart fridge, and that device requires a companion app as part of its setup experience, then that app is super relevant to the device's out-of-box experience, right? You just need it. Now, other sort of ideas are a little bit harder for us to evaluate. So for example, if you think about maybe like sale information at a store, like does everyone in the store care that the sale is happening? It's a little bit hard for us to say. And so for now, we're erring on the side of caution. And then the fourth is really a kind of a technical consideration. You want to be sure that the user can launch directly into your promoted feature, like we did with Target and the barcode scanner. If you can't, then that's something you'd want to address before you apply to this program. OK, so I'm going to take you through a few of our partners to give you a sense of the ecosystem that we're building. So I'm going to start with United. This app has many features, but I'm going to zero in on just this one. United offers free in-flight movies and entertainment through their app. But you have to have the app. And speaking from personal experience, if you take off and you've forgotten to install this app, your children will be disappointed in you. So reminding the user to install it when they're still waiting at the departure gate, it's both contextually relevant and it's very useful. Here's another one it's a combination of both device and place. So at many CVS pharmacies, they have a photo kiosk. And this lets you print photos right from your phone. And compared to like uploading photos to a website and like waiting for it in the mail, it's pretty magical. But the process is even more magical if you have the app. And that's because the app lets you establish a peer-to-peer Wi-Fi connection with the kiosk, and it makes the photo selection process much, much faster. So here again, there's something that the user can do, and it's relevant at a place. So one more, the Broad. It's a new modern art museum in LA, and they've got a great in-app audio tour. Now, chances are you wouldn't listen to this tour at home, but if you're in the museum, it's very relevant to getting the most out of your experience. So these were all features that required an app install. I'm going to offer one counterexample that doesn't require our approval because it just uses the web, and that's Notre Dame. So Notre Dame, besides being a respected institute of higher learning, is also a popular tourist destination for its many historic buildings and landmarks. And they created a virtual tour by placing beacons around the campus. And what they did was they associated each beacon with a mobile web page that has more information and maybe even a story about that specific place. Now, they've got both an app and a mobile website, but in their case, the mobile web provided as good an experience as the app, and so it was the right choice. We're taking a lighter touch when it comes to nearby in the web. Really, we're just filtering out harmful links and things that Google's search infrastructure would classify as spam. So that gives you an idea of the kind of feature that we want to bring forward. We see Nearby and Android as helping users discover new ways to get things done. All right, so let's get into some of the technical details. I'm going to talk you through how to take advantage of Nearby in this new way. One of the great things about this program is it doesn't require any programming. Most of our partners were able to get things to just work with zero-code modifications to their app. Now, there is some work, but it's just on the beacon side. So I'm going to get into that. There's basically these 4 steps. You need to get some beacons. You need to set them up to advertise what you want, register them with Google, and then tie them to your app or website. So starting at step 1, you need something that can BLE advertise. So if you manufacture a smart device, it's just the device. But for installations at a place, we recommend getting some Eddystone beacons. So if you visit g.co/beacons, we've got links to 15 or so beacon partners and their web stores. But if you can't wait to receive your beacons in the mail, you can also turn an Android or iOS phone into a temporary beacon just by using the platform's advertising APIs. OK, so next we have to configure the beacon, provision it, we say. So some of the manufacturers will do this for you. And if not, they all provide companion apps. This is a screenshot of Radius Network's Rad Beacon app, but they all look similar and do sort of similar things. So again, so far, we bought some beacons, we installed an app, no programming. Now, if you want to use the physical web or Eddystone URL, you could actually be done at this step, here at step 2. Now, the physical web is an open standard for encoding a web URL directly in that identifier being emitted from the beacon. It works on Chrome on both iOS and Android, and Nearby is going to be adding support for it in the coming weeks. In fact, there's a talk tomorrow, 10 a.m., actually on this stage. But if you want to take advantage of the more advanced features, the app launching, the app installing, then you want to choose Eddystone UID or Eddystone EID at this step, and then we've got 2 more short steps. So you need to claim ownership of the beacon. You can do that with our Beacon Tools app. You just get near the beacon, select it in the app, hit register. Now, besides unlocking the app install and the app launching features, this has some other benefits. The beacon will show up in our web dashboard, and you'll be able to see it on a map. You can monitor its battery level. Basically, the beacon becomes location infrastructure that you own. And then last, we need to tie the beacon to your app or website, and we do this with an attachment. Now, if you're an expert thumb typer, maybe you're a millennial, you can do this directly inside the app and enter in all that JSON. I personally recommend the Beacon dashboard. It's a web tool. Again, it's linked from g.co/beacons. All right, so let's look at that attachment. it's got these fields, and this tells us what to put in that notification and then where to take the user when they tap on it. Now, again, the beautiful thing about Nearby is most of you won't have to change your apps to create these contextual notifications. There's one tricky part of this integration, and that's just this URL. So I'm going to show you a little bit more on that. And we'll provide some tools and documentation on how to get this right. But here's what to know. If the URL looks like the top one, then we take that to mean that it requires an app install. This is the one that requires our approval. And we'll have a sign-up form at the end that I'll tell you about. If it looks like the middle one, then we'll launch the app if it's already installed. And if it's not, we'll go to the mobile web fallback that you specify. No approval required. And then for the last one, if it's just a regular HTTPS URL, we'll just open the web page. Now, for the first two, the URLs that are going to launch an app, you want to make sure that the scheme, host, and path in that URL matches up to an intent filter in your manifest. And that's just so that we can launch your app directly into the right screen. Again, this is all launching soon, all documented at developers.google.com/nearby. OK, so if you want to experiment with the app install feature prior to being whitelisted, or you just want to try out an attachment before making it public, there's a way to mark the attachment as debug. And then once Nearby rolls out, it'll show up on phones that are in developer mode, but not the general population. OK, and this is the important part. If you'd like to apply to be whitelisted for the app install program, there's a sign-up form, again, at developers.google.com/nearby. Now, that sign-up form is geared towards apps like Target and like Mobile Passport. These are folks who've got beacons deployed, and they've got a strong user story around a contextual experience. And then, of course, smart devices. In fact, we actually did some integrations inside Google with teams like Chromecast and like Wear to help people install companion apps. But we're most excited to see what you guys build on top of this new Nearby notifications platform. So there it is. We're building Nearby into Android as a core feature, allowing users to discover things around them, whether it's contextual apps for the place that they're at, peer-to-peer collaborative experiences, or interactions with another smart device. We hope you like it. Thank you.